We're coming on the air with a warning that all those high prices we're seeing are likely to go still higher. That's the word from Jerome Powell today in his last meeting as Fed chair. More on his next moves and what the Fed's moves today could mean for what you'll pay for your mortgage, credit cards, and to fill up your tank. And one of President Trump's biggest political foes just turned himself in after a grand jury indicted him over a picture of seashells. Could James Comey end up behind bars? Then the battle of the billionaires, getting testy in a California courtroom. What went down today when Elon Musk was questioned by lawyers for the company he's suing, OpenAI. And the asylum seekers from Iran fighting to stay in the U.S. as the Trump administration tightens its crackdown on immigration. That's tonight's original later in the show. Hi there, I'm Garrett Haken for Hallie tonight, and we'll start off with the state of your money and the cost of all the stuff you buy. At the Fed today, Chair Jerome Powell says all those price hikes you're seeing, especially with gas, may get worse before they get better, mostly because of the war in Iran. The Fed also kept interest rates right where they are, so the costs of things like mortgages and credit cards should stay pretty much the same for now. Now remember, this is Powell's last meeting as the Fed chair, but he says he's going to stay on as a governor, and that hasn't happened since the 1940s. President Trump's pick to succeed him, Kevin Warsh, just cleared a key Senate hurdle earlier, teeing up a final vote in the next few weeks. One of the top challenges Warsh is inheriting, those rising gas prices, now averaging $4.23 a gallon. Those are the highest since the war in Iran began. This as we're learning that President Trump met with top energy execs to talk about next steps in extending his blockade of Iran's ports. That's according to a White House official who also told me this could go on for months. Let's bring in Christine Roman. So, Christine, you were at the Fed today. The chairman said prices would keep going up, but they're leaving the rates unchanged for now. How should we read the tea leaves here?
You know, he talked a lot about the four big supply shocks that the economy has gone through. You first had the COVID reopening, and then you had Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then you had tariffs, and now you have this new geopolitical uncertainty in the Middle East. So all of these things driving energy prices higher. But the bottom line, though, the economy is still pretty solid. This is what I asked him. How would you describe the economy outside of the misbehaving inflation? I mean, it's still awfully resilient given all of the blows.
I don't know that you can be awfully resilient. So it's actually quite resilient, I would say, because it's a positive thing. If I can have that amendment, yeah, the growth is really solid across our economy.
He also singled out the big spending on data centers as a big driver of economic growth in the economy right now. And he sees no signs of that slowing down as well. But he was the one who used the word misbehaving. Inflation is still misbehaving. And I had said to him, I'm like,
that naughty inflation.
Yeah, but American families don't feel like it's been misbehaving. Misbehaving is not the word that they would use, I think, to describe it, because it has been a problem for American families since 2020.
It's interesting about the data centers because those are so divisive in so many communities. The chair gets the headlines, but the Fed's a board, it's a group, and there was a pretty divided Fed today. What should we make about the disagreements here? What does that mean?
So there were 4 voting members who did not agree with the statement and the decision. One of them was a guy named Stephen Myron, who is a Trump appointee who wanted a rate cut. The other 3, they agreed that they shouldn't move interest rates today, but they didn't want to suggest that the next move was going to be a cut. Maybe it could have to be an interest rate hike because of what we're seeing in terms of inflation. Like you raise interest rates when you're trying to rein in higher prices, and we do have a price shock here. So I think that dissent in the Fed, that is the most dissent, 4 members not agreeing since 1992. So you've got Jay Powell, who's leaving as the chair, going to stay on the board and sort of handing over some internal discussions inside the Fed that aren't necessarily the consensus you usually see.
It's interesting, they're not just disagreeing, but they're disagreeing about what the next course of action would even be within the disagreement. So, all right.
Yeah, there's disagreement within the disagreement, exactly.
Good, great. Well, that'll be fun for the misbehaving inflation. Christine Romans, thank you for that reporting. The deputy director of the FBI briefly turning himself into authorities today after a federal grand jury indicted him over a picture of seashells. You see James Comey leaving federal court earlier today in the back seat of this vehicle here. His attorney said he's going to file multiple motions and ask the Justice Department to hold on to their records. Remember, Comey's facing 2 federal charges, both relating to making threats against the president's life. They're all because of this photo that he posted on Instagram last year. If you can't make it out, it's a picture of seashells he says he found on a beach walk. They spell out 8647. If you've ever worked at a restaurant, the restaurant lingo, 86 can mean something is sold out, or it can mean to get rid of something, like 86 the tomatoes on that sandwich. President Trump is obviously the 47th president of the United States. Here's what he had to say today about this.
Do you really think that he was endangering your life or threatening your life with that?
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill him.
It's another read. You see Comey's family entering court earlier, where he was placed under arrest. He left court today without any conditions for his release. Ryan Riley joins me now. He's been covering all this. So, Ryan, walk us through exactly what went down in federal court today and what comes next for Comey and his legal team.
Yeah, so this was just sort of an initial pit stop in Virginia. This case will ultimately play out in the Eastern District of North Carolina, where you have this pretty Trump-affiliated U.S. attorney who's really been driving this case. And, you know, basically the reason the jurisdiction came about is because that's where James Comey was when he posted that photo of the seashells. He's got a beach house down there, and so that's where this jurisdiction is. That's where it'll play out. But I did get a chance to press the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, today about what he thinks about this case, because under Justice Department protocols, you're only supposed to bring a case if you think it's more likely than not that you can actually secure a conviction that will be upheld on appeal. Here's what he had to say when I asked him about the case.
If there's a prosecutor in this country that speaks about what a jury will do, they are not living up to their oath. I know that a grand jury returned a 2-count indictment. I know that this case was investigated for the past year. I do not know what a jury of his peers will do at a trial that will come at some point in the future.
And so a lot of legal experts have just said that this is really going to have a tough time surviving just initial motions to dismiss. But, you know, that's all to come still down the line.
Well, and one of the motions that Comey's attorneys say they plan on filing is for vindictive prosecution, which seems pretty self-explanatory. How much does the fact that this is his second time getting indicted by the administration play into what might happen there?
I mean, that and every single word that Donald Trump has ever uttered about James Comey are really going to help. This is I mean, I had one former federal prosecutor tell me that, you know, the vindictive and selective memos are really tough. That's a tough burden. It's tough to even get sort of discovery along those lines, but that this is a slam dunk case, right? I mean, if there was ever a selective and vindictive prosecution to be had, this would be it, just because it's so clear Donald Trump has been driving the ball on this. And there's no comparator cases for seashell cases that they can really point to that are of similar matter, because otherwise, you know, there are T-shirts all over the internet, and as you know, it's a restaurant term as well. So it's just going to be really challenging for them to say that other people are being charged with the same crime, because they're not.
That's fascinating background. Ryan Riley, thank you for your reporting here. And breaking right now, investigators are linking a shot that came from the suspected White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter to the bullet that struck a Secret Service officer. That's according to 3 law enforcement officials familiar with the case against Cole Allen. This comes the same day we're getting a clearer picture, quite literally, of what the DOJ says he was allegedly planning. They dropped these photos as part of a new court filing. They show Allen in what the DOJ says is a hotel room selfie from Saturday night. You can see on his body there the guns, knives, and magazines filled with ammunition. We're also learning from a source familiar with the planning that there are, quote, active conversations going on about rescheduling the Correspondents' Dinner. Let's go to Gary Grumbach, who was part of the group working Saturday night instead of attending that dinner. So what else are we learning from these documents produced today by the government?
So we're learning that this man was an intelligent man who had really planned exactly what he wanted to do and was tracking President Trump even that evening using some public source information that was on the online, using some pool reports and looking at the live streams of what the president was doing at that dinner in the minutes before he went downstairs and attempted to, according to the prosecutors, assassinate the president. We're also learning what he had with him, and there's a laundry list of things that he had with him. Basically, what he had were 2 firearms, one of them a pump-action shotgun, one of them a .38 caliber pistol. He had a ton of ammunition, dozens and dozens of rounds of ammunition for both firearms. He had 2 knives, 4 daggers, needle nose pliers, wire cutters, and a Samsung cell phone, Garrett.
It's a lot of equipment. We're also learning more about what happened Saturday night. Obviously, the information about, you know, who shot this agent is important. I think we all had a lot of questions about whether that might have been accidental or friendly fire. Talk about that and what we're learning about exactly how Saturday night played out right around 8:30 as this was all going down.
So there were a lot of questions as to whether this was friendly fire, and we were learning tonight from our own Kelly O'Donnell, according to several law enforcement sources, that this was not friendly fire, that the individual Cole Allen did shoot a Secret Service officer who then returned fire and attempted,
which we see on that video. It's pretty extraordinary.
We do see on the video that you're seeing right now, it's clear they attempted to return fire, but Cole Allen was not hit by any bullets. He said he apparently skinned his knee on his way down. That was the only injury that Cole Allen received.
So sort of a lucky turn of events that he ended up not being able to run through the lobby on his own 2 feet.
Exactly, and you saw from the video, it was a quick move through those magnetometers that were ending up being broken down for the evening. He was very fast on the way, and the president has said as much, that he was concerned about whether or not the ballroom would be safe after that point.
All right, Garrett Grumbach, thank you for that. And some breaking news just into us now. Federal prosecutors just filed new charges against a Mexican state governor and 9 other current and former Mexican government and police officials for allegedly conspiring with cartel leaders, including the sons of El Chapo. Prosecutors writing in brand new court documents, quote, "These politicians and law enforcement officials have abused their authority in support of the cartel, exposed and subjected victims to threats and violence, and sold out their offices in exchange for massive bribes." Roca Moya, the governor of the Mexican state of Sinaloa, has long denied accusations of corruption related to the cartel in his state. NBC News has not been able to immediately reach attorneys for all 10 defendants in this case. Let's bring in Jonathan Dietz on this. So, Jonathan, what more are we learning from these new court documents here? Pretty extraordinary case.
Yes, that the governor and 9 current and former Mexican officials, some of them leading state and local police officials, allegedly involved in helping the Sinaloa cartel export drugs, get machine guns and other weapons. And in one case, one former police official accused of helping the cartel carry out kidnappings and murder of DEA informants and his relatives. So that contained in the indictment handed up by the Southern District late this afternoon. Again, the drugs, weapons, and murder for hire type charges filed, which carry up to 40 years in life if convicted. The governor, a short time ago, putting out a statement denying any wrongdoing, saying that the charges are politically motivated. The Mexican government put out a statement saying that they have received an extradition request from the United States for the governor and those 9 officials to be sent back here to New York to face trial, and that the Mexican government is currently considering that request. Again, the charges carry up to 40 years to life. President Claudia Sheinbaum has not issued a public statement yet. Some of those charged are members of her political party. In the past, she has denied having any knowledge that any political associates are involved with the cartels. And again, in this case, the Sinaloa cartel is accused to be the main player here that was paying millions in bribes to some of these officials. The charges allege several of the officials were literally on the payroll, being paid tens of thousands of dollars a month to help either turn a blind eye to the crimes and of violence and drug dealing that they were involved in, and or literally helping them learn information that was being shared among law enforcement about their drug operations. So again, the Sinaloa governor and 9 others charged, and New York officials looking to have them extradited here to New York to face trial.
How quickly does that extradition process typically go, Jonathan? I could see it almost being a safety issue for the defendants here.
It could take quite a while. It could go relatively quickly. It really is at the hands of the Mexican government now in terms of how cooperative they want to be. We have seen in the past, recent past, that they have sent numerous drug kingpins back to New York and Chicago and elsewhere to face trial. So we await to see what will happen in this case.
All right, Jonathan Dietz for us in New York. Jonathan, thank you. The Pentagon today said that the cost of the war in Iran is above $25 billion now. As the defense secretary appears on Capitol Hill for the first time since the war began. Lawmakers taking the opportunity to square off with Pete Hegseth over how long the war could last and the administration's justification for it.
Well, their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24.
We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions.
In the backdrop for all of this, President Trump told Axios he's rejecting Iran's proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz, saying he'll keep Iran under a naval blockade until the regime agrees to a deal with the U.S. on its nuclear program. Let's bring in Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill covering this for us tonight. So, Ryan, some fireworks in the hearing. Beyond the drama and the price tag, what did we learn today?
The short answer is not much, Garrett. As you know, the secretary has a way of talking in kind of vague platitudes that don't really get to the specificity that members of Congress are looking for as it comes to the total cost of this war going forward, how much longer it will last, what the stated goals are. In each instance, he found a way to kind of talk around it without giving any kind of specific answers. And it many times felt as though it was offensive that he was being pressed on some of those issues, and he would respond angrily as a result. Listen to one of those exchanges.
The way you stain the troops when you tell them 2 months in, Congressman, you should know better. Shame on you. Calling this a quagmire 2 months in. The effort, what they've undertaken, what they've succeeded, the success on the battlefield that could create strategic opportunities, the courage of a president to confront a nuclear Iran, and you call it a quagmire, handing propaganda to our enemies? Shame on you for that statement.
And this is often a tactic that Secretary Hegseth takes when anyone is critical of the strategy or critical of the leadership decisions. He automatically extends that criticism to the individual folks on the battlefield, which many of these Democratic members that were asking specific questions about the war went out of their way to compliment the work of the members of the military, but then separate that out and talk about the questions they had about the overall strategy. It led to quite a few moments like that, where there was tension and back and forth, but as we said before, Garrett, not a ton of substance, and we didn't really learn all that much about the path forward.
And it's interesting pushback on the timing, given it was President Trump's timeline of, the 4 to 6 weeks originally that sort of set the boundaries for that discussion. And on that idea of a timeline, Ryan, the president is technically facing a deadline tomorrow to start withdrawing troops or get approval from Congress to keep going in the war against Iran because of the War Powers Act. Just how real is this exactly?
I don't really think it's all that real, because the only way that this gets enforced is if Congress asserts itself as a co-equal branch of government. And right now, Republican leadership has just not felt all that compelled to move into that space and actually exert that authority. There is obviously a lot of disagreement as to when this 60 days begins and ends. There's members of the White House and the administration that are arguing that the temporary ceasefire, for instance, should not count against that 60-day limit. At the end of the day, though, Garrett, unless Congress takes the initiative to actually get involved in this and pass something or do something to try and exert their authority here, it's not really going to matter for much. And it seems as though the president and the administration understand that, because they really haven't made too much of an effort to keep Congress looped in on this process.
It's a story we've discussed in so many other contexts along the way. Ryan Nobles for us on Capitol Hill. Ryan, thank you. We have more breaking news tonight. We're just learning that a person has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder in London. We know the person is a 45-year-old British national accused of stabbing 2 Jewish men on the street in broad daylight. Authorities there are calling it a terror incident, a warning that what you're about to see might be disturbing. Surveillance video caught the suspect walking before lunging at one of the victims near a bus stop. Then nearby, you see him running down the street trying to grab another victim. Police say both men were treated for stab wounds and are in stable condition now at the hospital. We're just getting a look at this new body cam video from the police there, showing the suspect being taken into custody. It's a little shaky, but you can see him there confronting officers here. They respond by tasering the man to the ground, then repeatedly kicking him as they try to get him under control. Danielle Hamanjan is in London for us. So, Danielle, walk us through these new details. What else are we learning about the attacks and about the man who's now in custody?
Yeah, some pretty dramatic video there. This is a suburb of northwest London called Golders Green. Population 16,000. Half of them are British Jews, so home to a very big community for the Jewish population here in London. And it's here that in broad daylight, 2 Jewish men were stabbed. You showed the video of one man being lunged at by the suspect. It happened around 11 a.m. One man in his 70s, the other man in his 30s, both now
in hospital, but police say that when they confronted the suspect, he refused to drop his weapon, refused to show his hands. They feared he was holding or had something else other than a knife, perhaps an explosive device. So they proceeded to tasering him, pinning him to the ground and arresting him. Now, they've declared this a terror incident. The suspect, 45 years old, has just come out in the last few minutes that he's a British national born in Somalia with a history of serious violence and mental health issues, and he's now in custody on suspicion of attempted murder. What people here will tell you is that they are shocked that this could happen in broad daylight, but they are not surprised. This is, they say, part of a pattern. We've heard the British Prime Minister talk about describing this as appalling. He said that an attack on the Jewish community is an attack on Britain. I spoke to a man here earlier today who talked about how, you know, some people who are intent on doing harm are equating what's happening in Israel to Jews everywhere, and they are on the receiving end of this abuse and this anger. Take a listen.
It's not a surprise. This has been going on for some time now. All our institutions, our schools and our synagogues have to have security around them, has to have protection from potential violence and terrorism. And it's unacceptable. We have to live in a society like that.
And so authorities are saying that there will be a larger police presence. But as you heard the man just saying that, or he's not alone, that it is not normal to have police outside synagogues and schools everywhere here. Garrett, back to you.
This is not the kind of thing you want to see. Danielle Hamamdjian for us in London. Thank you very much. And in just a bit, we'll break down today's Supreme Court ruling that could slash black representation in Congress, what it all means for the so-called redistricting wars. And forget Free Willy. Now time for Free Timmy, how this whale is headed home. Fireworks in a California courtroom today as the richest man in the world was getting combative with lawyers for one of the most influential AI companies. All of it part of a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit pitting billionaire against billionaire. Our team inside court reporting that Elon Musk and an attorney for OpenAI were talking all over each other during cross-examination. At one point, Musk said the attorney's questions were designed to, quote, trick him and mislead the jury. Musk's testimony today outlining the pretty sharp contrast in his relationship with OpenAI over the years. His attorney presenting emails like these from 2018 where company execs called Musk the most overwhelmingly competent person in the world, and another who said Musk had clarity of purpose. Feelings Musk said at the time were mutual. Remember, the reason Musk is on the stand here at all is because he's accusing OpenAI CEO Sam Altman of betraying the company's initial mission by changing the nonprofit that Musk had initially invested in into a for-profit company as it is now. Musk testified that time and time again, Altman and others assured him that this was a nonprofit. OpenAI's team argues that Musk just wanted control and that he ultimately got mad when the company didn't give it to him. OpenAI says the whole reason Musk has filed this lawsuit now is to take a hit at a direct competitor to his own AI company, xAI. If it's confusing, I have good news. Brian Chung has been following this story for us. So, Brian, talk a little bit about Musk's demeanor today, this idea that he got feisty, especially in the last hour of testimony. Not surprising, given what seems pretty personal here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a case that I've been describing as 50% the future of artificial intelligence, but also 50% a schoolyard beef between two people who just don't like each other. You have to remember that this goes back years. In fact, Elon Musk was known for tweeting at Sam Altman, calling him Scam Altman. There's been lots of barbs traded on social media, and now this is going to court. Again, there was some interesting exchanges between the attorneys representing Sam Altman that was cross-examining Elon Musk in his second day of testimony, asking a lot of questions that he was trying to phrase as yes or no questions, and Elon Musk seemingly wanting to not answer them, disagreeing with the premise that these were questions that could be easily answered with yes or no questions. There was a really bizarre, or maybe not bizarre moment, depending on how you view Elon Musk, where he actually asked the questioning attorney, have you stopped beating your wife? Again, posing a hypothetical, saying that that's not the type of thing you can answer with a yes or no question. The judge stepping in during that moment, Garrett, to say we are not going there. It's just one example of how contentious this particular hearing got, and underscores how difficult it's going to be to get some of these answers out of Elon Musk as this goes into day 3 tomorrow.
And this distrust that Musk had with OpenAI came in phases. There was a honeymoon period here, and then things started to go downhill, right?
Yeah, and I think that this is where the viewers need a little bit of background here. Again, I think a lot of people might be eye-rolling like, oh, it's Elon Musk versus Sam Altman. It's just two big billionaires going after each other. But you have to remember, at one point, they were friends. Over 10 years ago, they helped stand up OpenAI together. Elon Musk providing resources, guidance, and also $38 million. Now he's upset that he gave them the money on the premise that this would be a nonprofit company. And then he alleges that he got baited and switched when OpenAI chose to turn this into a nonprofit company that has a very substantial for-profit arm. Again, the bait and switch language comes from a text message that Elon says he sent Sam Altman saying, what the hell is going on? In another particular quote here that caught a lot of attention in his testimony today, Elon Musk compared this to essentially having his car stolen, saying, has the car been stolen or not? I concluded the car had indeed been stolen. The nonprofit had been looted. Elon Musk and his lawyers trying to paint the picture of OpenAI as a nonprofit that took his money and then behind his back said, actually, now we're a for-profit company. Thanks for the money. Again, OpenAI denies all of these claims, and they argue that this is just Elon Musk with his own AI company, XAI, trying to hit the competitors in the ankles here by trying to get them to pay up $134 billion. No big deal.
Yeah, just a drop in the bucket for the world's richest man. Brian Chung, thank you for that reporting. And today, the Supreme Court just dealt a major blow to the Voting Rights Act, and it's likely a win for Republicans ahead of the midterms. In a 6-3 ruling, the High Court struck down Louisiana's congressional map, saying that states can almost never consider race when drawing their maps. Justice Alito wrote in the majority opinion that their map in Louisiana was a, quote, unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Justice Kagan dissenting, quote, the consequences are likely to be far-reaching and grave. And now Louisiana could redraw its congressional map just 2 weeks before voters head to the polls there in the midterm primaries. It's too soon to tell what the total impact of this ruling will have on states all across the country, but it could potentially open the door for other states to redraw their maps too. A Tennessee lawmaker reportedly says she wants to use the Supreme Court's ruling to pass a new map that eliminates a majority black district around Memphis. Lawmakers in the Florida House and Senate just approved a map today that gives big boosts to Republicans in that state, sending the map to the governor's desk to sign. You can see what it would do to the state of Florida there. And it all comes on the backdrop of this months-long redistricting battle all across the country. The handful of other states redrawing their maps in moves that could tip the balance of power on Capitol Hill. Let's bring in Sahil Kapoor, who's been following all this for us. So, Sahil, based on this ruling today and what it would mean for the Voting Rights Act and changing the way some of these districts are drawn to protect minority representation, what states might have a realistic shot at redrawing their maps, perhaps even again ahead of the midterms?
So first, Garrett, the bigger picture. According to sources in both parties I've talked to, only a handful of seats at most are likely to be impacted in the current 2026 midterms, just 6 months away. And the most obvious places are this: Louisiana, where the case was. There are 2 Democratic-held districts that Republicans could try to draw out. In addition, Alabama, 2 Democratic-held districts they could try to draw out. Tennessee, that has a late primary. There's 1 Democratic district they could try to draw out. I've also heard South Carolina mentioned as a possibility. That is still TBD. There are lots of states in the South in particular that are weighing their options right now. There are others like North Carolina, Texas, and Mississippi where primaries are already done, so it's a little too late in the calendar for them to redraw at this time. And of course, this all comes in the midst of an ongoing redistricting battle that just yesterday looked like a wash for both parties before Florida had their say. They're trying to, they passed this new map trying to draw up to 4 more Republican-held seats. Let's show the balance here. It was about 10-10 before Florida had their say. Now Florida could have up to 4 more Republican seats. So between these 2 developments, the advantage here just in the redrawing map tilts toward Republicans. And the last point I'll make here, Garrett, is if the landscape stays what it is today, where Democrats are overperforming by about double digits, this might not yield the kind of benefits that Republicans expect, because as the minority leader here on the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffries, says, he calls it a dummy mander, which is the trolling term of art in Florida and Texas for trying to draw a district to gain power while diluting existing ones so you lose them.
Right. I mean, we talk about these seats like as soon as the maps are redrawn that they automatically go one way, but it's just based on the way voters performed in previous elections. That doesn't necessarily guarantee future results. So can you clarify a little bit, Sahil? So for like a state like Texas, where they've already had their primaries, that means you're not redrawing a map this time around, but we're looking at potentially new maps again next cycle for 2028?
Absolutely, and that's where the biggest impact of this ruling is going to be felt. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 36 majority-minority House districts that were drawn to be compliant with the section of the Voting Rights Act to protect minority representation. Now that is essentially gone, if you believe Justice Elena Kagan, and states are certainly going to try to redraw their maps. There are a number of states, Republican-held states, particularly in the South, that don't like those districts because they tend to vote Democrat. Those could be drawn out, and we're already hearing a desire among Democrats to go even more aggressive and even more retaliatory in redistricting in blue states like California and Illinois. Suffice it to say, this will accelerate a race to the bottom on redistricting, Garrett.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out over these next couple of months. Sahil, I know you'll be all over it, but for now, let's get over to the 5 things. These are the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, former Attorney General Pam Bondi will appear before a key House panel after all. 1 month from today, lawmakers will get a chance to ask her about her handling of the Epstein files. Democrats say it's not even an hour after they filed contempt charges against her. Remember, the DOJ tried to block her testimony, saying President Trump fired her, so why did private citizen Bondi need to show up? But now, Bondi is agreeing to testify, and we'll be watching. Number 2, a scary moment caught on camera. A car slamming into a Twitch streamer. It happened in the middle of a cross-country walk to raise money for a school. He's now recovering at a hospital. Number 3, South Korea's former president faces 7 years in prison. His sentence just issued after he declared martial law in the country. That's on top of a life sentence he already has on separate charges. His lawyers plan to appeal the verdicts. Number 4, you see there the Artemis II crew back on Earth getting the Oval Office treatment today. President Trump congratulated the astronauts on their mission around the moon. He says the U.S. has a, quote, good shot at putting an astronaut on the moon before his term ends. At number 5, free Timmy. The stranded humpback whale spent weeks in shallow water near Germany. Crews just clawed him out. They're now guiding him back to the North Sea. That's one we're going to stay on top of, too. When we come back, we'll bring you to a trail of destruction left by relentless storms across the South. Our team in Texas will tell us what they're seeing up close. And how the Pope put his foot down before meeting a nun from his hometown. We'll explain next. Right now, a massive cleanup is underway after powerful storms, including 2 tornadoes, tore through parts of the South. Here's some of the worst of it. About 80 miles from Dallas, an EF3 tornado here, making this area just about unrecognizable. Dozens of homes ripped from their foundations. Somehow, only 5 non-threatening injuries were reported. And as we've been talking about for days, severe weather isn't just an issue in Texas. Check this out in Missouri, after hailstones shattered car windows. Let's bring in George Solis, who's made his way to Mineral Wells, Texas. So, George, the weather has been just relentless across the South. What are you hearing from folks there?
Yeah, hey, Garrett, 6 straight days of severe storms. Here, officials saying it is, frankly, nothing short of a miracle that nobody died. When you talk about an EF3 tornado with winds up to 145 miles per hour, and as you reference, the destruction here is rampant. Buildings looking just like the ones behind me. They are completely leveled. We're talking homes and businesses. Here in Mineral Wells, the epicenter of most of this damage happening around an industrial area. So many people, including business owners, were still working when these tornadoes struck, some of them riding out the storms even in the building. We actually also spoke to a homeowner a little bit earlier today who rode out the storm inside of their home. They were describing just the frightening scene you can imagine as the twister ripped the roof right off of their home. They didn't know what was going to happen next. Today, the heartbreaking scene as they returned, beginning to find some of their belongings, even looking for pets. And as I mentioned, we heard from business owners who were inside watching this all unfold. Take a listen to what one of them told us.
You could hear the debris. My ears popped. We've got one building in there. It's made out of solid concrete. Put everybody in there and had to wait it out.
It hit hard, and we've had a lot of volunteers. The community stepped up, and they got out here first thing this morning to help clean up.
Yeah, and I was mentioning all of the help that's coming into this community. Officials actually asking people to just wait a little bit. Right now, this area is basically a do not enter zone outside of some press and some of the first responders here and line workers, because they want to make sure they're able to assess all of this damage and make sure they can get to it safely before everybody starts coming back in here to get some of their belongings. But the cleanup here, Garrett, certainly going to be extensive.
Certainly looks that way. George Solis, west of the Metroplex for us in Mineral Wells, Texas. George, thank you. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they say is going down in their regions. It's a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest bureau, one person is dead after a house explosion in Ohio. You see it here, fully collapsed. Neighbors say the blast shook their homes and blew out windows. No word yet on what caused the explosion. Also, from our Southern Bureau, take a look here. Body cam video showing Texas police officers saving a family from a flood. You'd see officers, they're using jumper cables to pull a woman out of a car as it was filling up with water. That mom and her 3 kids are doing fine. The town says its police cars will now have water rescue gear. And also out of our Midwest Bureau, check out the world's biggest White Sox fan and his new gear. Pope Leo getting a delivery from a Chicago nun. But here's the catch. The Vatican would not let Sister Deb wear her own gear. Why? She's a Brewers fan. It doesn't work. Fandom aside, the nun and the small business who provided the jerseys are calling the whole thing truly surreal. I bet. After the break, in tonight's original, our team speaks with asylum seekers from Iran living in the U.S. Why some say life was better back home, even as they fight to stay. So tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching closely. With so many people impacted by the war with Iran, ceasefire or no ceasefire, tonight we're taking a closer look at a specific, often overlooked group, Iranian asylum seekers. They fled the regime and came to the United States for refuge, but many are now stuck in limbo, in and out of ICE detention, fearing for relatives, their homeland, and fighting for a chance for freedom in the U.S. Yasmin Basugian has their story.
مجبور بودیم یعنی هیچ راه دیگه ای نداشتیم باید می اومدیم بیرون.
Farzaneh Nazi knew she had to leave Iran in 2022 during the Women Life Freedom protests. It was in a street protest like these when she says her sister, standing right next to her, was shot in the face by government forces. Her sister survived the less lethal rounds, but lost vision in one eye. Also, Farzaneh's husband, Assad, worked for a banned Kurdish opposition party, drawing harassment and beatings from the government. Then in early 2025, charging documents show Assad facing imprisonment for, quote, betrayal, propaganda, and disturbance. That is when they finally decided to flee. They left a happy life and a close family, but they say it was impossible to stay.
کلا زیر سایه جمهوری اسلامی زندگی می‌کردیم دیگه همیشه با ترس با استرس با بدبختی اینا.
Their route to the U.S. took them through Venezuela, Panama, and Mexico. They shared messages with NBC News showing how, along the way, they were extorted by gangs, also saying they were detained by government forces. They arrived at the U.S. border at Eagle Pass, Texas, and crossed. They were apprehended and claimed asylum. It was March of 2025.
My administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown.
میدونستیم که شرایط آمریکا بده بازم مجبور شدیم بیاییم.
ICE data shows hundreds of Iranians were detained in the last year of the Biden administration. Then the government stopped regularly reporting numbers after President Trump was inaugurated. The Department of Homeland Security declined to tell NBC News how many Iranians are currently in custody. Farzaneh and Assad are essentially invisible in government statistics, but their circumstances are very real. The couple was separated in detention. Farzaneh was soon released. She was 7 months pregnant.
بعد روزی که بچه‌م به دنیا آمد واقعا خیلی خوب بود. اگه همسرم بود شاید میتونست بگم بهترین روز زندگی میشد ولی جای خالیش همیشه هست همیشه بود این تو مثلا
It would have been the best day. It was the best day of your life when you gave birth to your son.
بچه‌تو به دنیا بیاری ولی مثلا
But you were alone. Their son Rasan, now 10 months old, has never known his father's touch. Assad regularly FaceTimes with his family from detention. Just a month after fleeing Iran, Assad was sentenced to 25 years in jail there without a trial. Now in the U.S., he sits in ICE detention. It has been a year. He says he's worried for his family's safety as he watches the war play out. Despite his asylum claim and a legal challenge to his imprisonment, Assad is marked for removal. With his home country at war with the United States, he fears for his life being sent back to the region and says the judges here don't believe his documents or anything that he says. They just want to deport him and the other Iranians in detention with him. Even during a ceasefire, the family watches the conflict unfold, fearing for relatives, their homeland, and their own chance at freedom.
The climate for asylum seekers in the United States is poor at the moment, and that's true across nationalities. But I think that for Iranian refugees with pending asylum claims in this country, the fact that the United States is now in an active armed conflict with their country of origin puts them in this very difficult position where they feel the country that they look to for protection no longer seems like a reliable protector.
While their cases drag on, Farzaneh is living with a relative in Tennessee, along with the wife of her cousin, Mina Bashmaghi, also seeking asylum with her young son. Mina's husband was deported back to Iran in September. She says he fled the regime the very next day, fearing for his life. Now he remains in exile, calling occasionally for brief updates. Are you afraid that you could be separated from your son? Mina was released with an ankle monitor last May.
بهم گفت یا اینو باید ببندی به پاد یا باید بری زندان و بچه‌تو ازت میگیرن و معلوم نیست که چه اتفاقی خیلی میترسم. Sorry.
It's okay. خیلی سخته.
خیلی.
Her case in limbo as she watches President Trump make statements like this.
To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible.
And the president has expressed support for the Iranian people, right? He has said we want to free the Iranian people from this regime. But yet you are here with an ankle bracelet on. Your husband was deported. There are other people like you in the same situation.
من که سیاستمدار نیستم ولی فقط انگار مردم عادی بازیچن. هزاران زندگی از هم میپاشه. هزاران نفر بدون بچه میشن، بدون پدر میشن، هزار.
In a statement to NBC News, DHS said that Assad will, quote, receive full due process, adding, being in detention is a choice, and encouraged all people who enter the United States illegally to accept the government stipend of $2,600 and a free flight to self-deport. It did not answer our questions about removing Iranian asylum seekers during a war.
در کل بهتر بودیم قبل از اینکه بیایم بیرون.
For Mina, Farzaneh, and so many others, their homeland in turmoil, their future in the U.S. equally uncertain.
فقط مردم عادی ایران دارن ضربه میبرن. وگرنه هیچ برنده این وسط نیست.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
When we come back, the royal invasion of New York, what the king and queen are up to today in the country's biggest city, and our own Jenna Bush Hager's exclusive interview. Day 3 of the royals' U.S. visit saw the scene shift to New York City for the day, including an emotional first for King Charles and Queen Camilla. The king made his first ever visit to the 9/11 memorial in Lower Manhattan. He and the Queen laying a bouquet of flowers at one of the memorial pools there. 67 British nationals were among the lives lost in the terror attack that took place 25 years ago this September. You see, the royal couple were guided by former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. They also exchanged pleasantries with local leaders, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and current Mayor Zohran Mamdani. I want to bring in Aaron McLaughlin now. So, Aaron, what's some of the significance here of the visit to New York City? Help us understand where this fits in kind of the big picture special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K.
Well, this was another poignant and historic moment for King Charles. Garrett visiting the 9/11 memorial just months before the 25th anniversary of that horrific terror attack, which claimed almost 3,000 lives, including 67 British citizens. It was likely an emotional moment for him. You see him there meeting with first responders. You see him meeting. We also saw him meeting with the mayor of New York. You see them there laying flowers at the memorial. He also left a note expressing solidarity with the American people. And that solidarity was very much a theme throughout this visit. We saw his address to the joint meeting of Congress yesterday, in which he talked about 9/11, how it was the first time that the NATO alliance invoked Article 5 of the treaty, that critical collective defense treaty. He took the opportunity there to sort of reiterate the importance of that alliance to global security, to the security of both the United Kingdom and the United States going forward. So those themes certainly reiterated today, just in the mere visuals of that emotional moment there at the New York, the 9/11 memorial. And then from there, his visit continued on throughout the rest of the city.
They were all over town today. I think pretty close to 30 Rock today, too, right?
Yeah, that's right. We understand, actually, that visit is happening right now. It was a packed day from the 9/11 memorial. They sort of split up. The Queen went to a literary event at the New York Public Library. It was a star-studded event, including the likes of Anna Wintour, as well as Sarah Jessica Parker. Our very own Jenna Bush Hager had the chance to talk to the Queen about literature and the importance of literature, their shared passion. Take a listen to a bit of that conversation.
You've been to a lot of places, to quite a few.
We have, but it's been wonderful, and everybody's been very kind and welcoming.
The King went there from the 9/11 memorial to an urban planning event in Harlem, an urban farming event where he even fed some chickens. From chickens, he went to the Titans, meeting the CEOs here at 30 Rock in Midtown Manhattan. We understand right now there's a cultural event where they reunited for the cultural event before heading back to D.C. Garrett.
Just another day in the office for the King, and you can see more of that interview with Queen Camilla tomorrow morning on the Today Show. Aaron, thank you for your reporting. That's going to be a wrap for this hour. Our coverage picks up right now. And we're coming on the air with a warning that all those high prices we're seeing are likely to go still higher. That's the word from Jerome Powell today in his last meeting as Fed chair. More on his next moves and what the Fed's moves today could mean for what you'll pay for your mortgage, your credit card bills, and to fill up your tank. And one of President Trump's biggest political foes just turned himself in after a grand jury indicted him over a picture of seashells. Could James Comey end up behind bars? Then, the new details on a shocking terrorist attack in London. The video we're just getting in of authorities stopping the suspect. And the battle of the billionaires getting testy in a California courtroom. What went down today when Elon Musk was questioned by lawyers for the company he's suing, OpenAI. That's later in the show. Hey there, I'm Garrett Haake, and for Hallie tonight, we start off with the state of your money and the cost of all the stuff you buy. At the Fed today, Chair Jerome Powell says all those price hikes you're seeing, especially when it comes to gas, may get worse before they get better, mostly because of the war in Iran. The Fed also kept interest rates right where they are. This is Powell's last meeting as Fed chair, but he says he's still going to stay on as a governor, and that hasn't happened since the 1940s. President Trump's pick to succeed him, Kevin Warsh, just cleared a key Senate hurdle earlier, teeing up a final vote the next few weeks. One of the top challenges Warsh is inheriting, those rising gas prices, now averaging $4.23 a gallon, was the highest since the war with Iran began. The price of oil today surging past $120 a barrel to a 4-year high. This as we're learning that President Trump met with top energy execs to talk next steps in extending the blockade of Iran's ports. That's according to a White House official who also told me that this could go on for months. Let's bring in Christine Romans now. So, Christine, we just heard from the president on Powell's decision to stay. He said Jerome Powell wants to stay because he can't get a job anywhere else. That's harsh even for him. What do you make of the president's reaction to Powell today?
I don't know. In the pantheon of mean things the president has said about Jay Powell.
That's true. That's true. It barely cracks the top 10.
That doesn't really crack the top 10. But look, it is not necessarily the insults from the White House that has been the reason why Jay Powell says he's going to stay on as governor, even when his chairmanship is over. It's more what he calls these legal attacks that he's very concerned about. Listen to what he said.
These legal actions by the administration are unprecedented in our 113-year history, and there are ongoing threats of additional such actions. I worry that these attacks are battering the institution and putting at risk the thing that really matters to the public, which is the ability to conduct monetary policy without taking into consideration political factors.
He said he's not going to act as a shadow Fed chair when Kevin Warsh gets in there, and he's going to keep a low profile, but he wants to stay on the Fed board because of this unprecedented legal pressure from this White House. I did ask him about the overall economy, though. He talked about all of the supply shocks that the economy has taken, the most recent being the war in Iran. He says we haven't even gotten to the peak of energy prices and the pain on consumers because of that. But the backdrop of this is an economy that still is pretty solid. Listen. How would you describe the economy outside of the misbehaving inflation? I mean, it's still awfully resilient given all of the blows.
I don't know that you can be awfully resilient. So it's actually quite resilient, I would say, because it's a positive thing. If I can have that amendment, yeah, growth is really solid across our economy. You know,
he noted that inflation was misbehaving, and this was now most recently because of the war in Iran. But he did tick through all of these supply shocks. First, you had the COVID reopening, and then you had Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then you had tariffs, and now you have the war in Iran. If you think of the last 5 or 6 years, there have been these one after another one-off shocks to prices. If you're an American consumer, it doesn't feel like a one-off shock to you. It's been one long era of misbehaving inflation.
Well, it's all these unprecedented times, and I think as a former Capitol Hill reporter of how unprecedented it was for like Nancy Pelosi to stay on as Speaker, as a member of Congress. It feels like kind of a similar thing here with him staying on as governor. What are we seeing with mortgage rates surging now? What do we make of that?
Yeah, and how does that fit into this whole thing? So you were just talking at the beginning about those energy executives who met with the president. So there is this feeling in the markets that that's serious. The president is discussing with energy executives how long infrastructure here can hold out if there's an impasse in the Strait of Hormuz, an impasse with Iran, and this blockade of these Iranian ports. And that has driven oil prices and bond yields higher. Bond yields moving up means mortgage rates move up. So I'm looking at a mortgage rate right now of 6.5% on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Yesterday it was 6.38%. So it's the overall market action, the overall market response to what's happening, the war with Iran, a big driver here of mortgage rates today.
You're telling me I missed my chance to refinance.
You missed the boat. That boat is stuck in the Strait of Hormuz, my friend.
Great. Christine Romans, thank you for bringing the bad news, but the useful news, we always appreciate it. Thank you. Now, the former FBI director is briefly turning himself into authorities today. You may have seen it after a federal grand jury indicted him over a picture of seashells. You'll see James Comey leaving federal court earlier in the back seat of this SUV. His attorney said he's going to file multiple motions and ask the Justice Department to hold on to their records. Remember, he's facing 2 federal charges, both relating to making threats against the president's life because of this photo he posted on Instagram last year. It's hard to make out the 8, but you can see his picture of seashells he says he found on a beach walk. They spell out 8647. In restaurant lingo, 86 can mean something is sold out or means get rid of it, like 86 the tomatoes on that sandwich. President Trump obviously is the 47th president of the United States. Here's what he had to say about all this today.
Do you really think that he was endangering your life or threatening your life with that?
Well, if anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill him.
You see Comey's family entering court earlier where he was placed under arrest. He left court today without any conditions for his release. Ryan Riley joins me now. So, Ryan, walk us through what went down in federal court today and what may come next year for Comey and his legal team.
Yeah, it was kind of a pretty brief procedural hearing here. And remember, he was in court previously for that same court, that Alexandria courtroom, after he was indicted by someone who was found to have not legally held that position, Lindsay Halligan. She's a former insurance lawyer who didn't have prosecutorial experience, but was made the assistant, or the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District, brought that case. That was set aside. So now we're on round 2 here. But that case is ultimately going to play out in North Carolina, where that beach photo took place, where those seashells were laid out. And so that's what we're expecting going next. Todd Blanche today, was questioned about whether that phrase 8647, if that's, given that it's on T-shirts all across the internet, it's a hashtag frequently posted all over. If anyone who posted that on interstate commerce, which is basically the internet, was going to be charged with that. Here's what he had to say.
You know that every time that's posted, that number is posted, you know that every time there is a threat against the president, it doesn't necessarily lead to an indictment. It depends. It depends on the investigation. It depends on all kinds of factors. And so it's not, people should be very wary of threatening the life of President Trump, because that is a crime.
And of course, what Comey says is that he was not threatening the life of President Trump, that he thought this was a political message, meaning, remove. And so the Justice Department is going to struggle here, according to legal experts across the political spectrum, who say that, this is going to be tossed out probably on the first motion to dismiss, probably never make its way to the jury, because the Justice Department is going to have to prove that what Comey said wasn't true.
So can you help me understand this? Is the Justice Department trying to argue that this was Comey inciting someone else to murder Donald Trump? Or is there suggestion that James Comey was going to get in his car from his beach house in North Carolina and come up and do this himself? Because that's essentially what they have to prove, right?
Yeah, they have to sort of spell out that this was intended, right? And that's the intent is a very important component of the statute, which is why it's going to be such a struggle here, because he's made this representation that that's not what he meant, that he thought this was a political message. And so they're going to have to disprove that. And of course, we don't know what was told to the grand jury, but that's what Comey's team is going to want to get, because they think probably the grand jury was improperly instructed here, didn't actually know what the law was, and that if they were properly instructed on what the actual law was, wouldn't have actually returned this indictment in the first place.
Right, and grand juries, of course, don't get to hear from the defense at all as they're making those decisions. That's how that process works. Ryan Riley, thank you for your reporting and staying on this. And breaking right now, investigators are linking a shot that came from the suspected White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter to the bullet that struck a Secret Service officer. That's according to 3 law enforcement officials familiar with the case against Cole Allen. This comes the same day we're getting a clearer picture, quite literally, of what the DOJ says he was allegedly planning. They dropped these photos as part of a new court filing. They show Allen in what the DOJ says is basically just a hotel room selfie from Saturday night. You can see guns, knives, magazines filled with ammunition. We're also learning from a source familiar with the planning that there are, quote, active conversations going on about rescheduling the Correspondents' Dinner. Let's get to Gary Grumbach, who joins me now. So, Gary, a lot of new details tonight about what could have happened. We're learning more about the altercation, that moment captured on tape between the suspect and those Secret Service officers.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions about who exactly shot the U.S. Secret Service officer. Was it friendly fire or was it Cole Allen himself? And now we're hearing tonight, according to sources that have told NBC News, it was Cole Allen himself who shot the Secret Service officer. Of course, that officer was not seriously injured. He ended up going to the hospital, leaving that night and heading home. But that sort of puts an end to that part of the story here. But we're learning a lot in these documents about what exactly Cole Allen had on him when this happened. And the answer is a ton of firepower. He had two firearms, dozens of ammunition for both firearms. He had 4 daggers, 2 knives, and wire cutters, all on his person when he was heading towards the ballroom.
So sort of well-planned until it wasn't, right? A lot of stuff, a lot of planning to get there, and then just still sort of charging through this very well-protected area. We're also hearing more tonight from the president about what happened Saturday. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the president sat for an interview with 60 Minutes on Sunday afternoon with Norah O'Donnell, and more is coming out from that interview today. We're hearing 2 things. One, he thinks the security, the mags that we both went through to get into that ballroom, were too close to the ballroom itself. He wishes it was pushed back. He's also, admittedly, a little upset. He didn't get to tell his jokes. He didn't get to explain why he thought he was going to be so funny at that Correspondents' Dinner. Here's what he had to say about that.
We had a very sealed room. It was very airtight. Once the doors opened and the Secret Service, military, others came in, the police came in, the law enforcement, they came in, a lot of them. We had a lot of law enforcement. And it was a wall. But the doors were open. It was breached by them. if somebody happened to slip in, and when they said that, I said, you're right. But I did want to go up, but it would have been a much different speech.
And there's a big hearing tomorrow in federal court for a detention hearing for Cole Allen. A judge will decide whether or not he's detained pending trial. He's expected to be behind bars.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Interesting to hear that from the president, given he's been he's praised so much the response, but clearly a little bit upset about the planning and the fact that it got to this point in the first place. Gary Grumbach, thank you for that reporting. And some breaking news just into us. Federal prosecutors just filed new charges against a Mexican state governor and 9 other current and former Mexican government and police officials for allegedly conspiring with cartel leaders, including the sons of El Chapo. Prosecutors writing in brand new court documents, quote, these politicians and law enforcement officials have abused their authority in support of the cartel, exposed and subjected victims to threats and violence, and sold out their offices in exchange for massive bribes. Roca Moya, the governor of the Mexican state of Sinaloa, has long denied accusations of corruption related to the cartel in his state. NBC News has not been able to immediately reach attorneys for all 10 defendants in this case. Let's bring in Jonathan Dienst. Jonathan, what more are we learning from these new court documents here? Pretty extraordinary case.
Yes, that the governor and 9 current and former Mexican officials, some of them leading state and local police officials, allegedly involved in helping the Sinaloa cartel export drugs, get machine guns and other weapons. And in one case, one former police official accused of helping the cartel carry out kidnappings and murder of DEA informants and his relatives. So that contained in the indictment handed up by the Southern District late this afternoon. Again, the drugs, weapons, and murder for hire type charges filed, which carry up to 40 years in life if convicted. The governor, a short time ago, putting out a statement denying any wrongdoing, saying that the charges are politically motivated. The Mexican government put out a statement saying that they have received an extradition request from the United States for the governor and those 9 officials to be sent back here to New York to face trial, and that the Mexican government is currently considering that request. Again, the charges carry up to 40 years to life. President Claudia Sheinbaum has not issued a public statement yet. Some of those charged are members of her political party. In the past, she has denied having any knowledge that any political associates are involved with the cartels. And again, in this case, the Sinaloa cartel is accused to be the main player here that was paying millions in bribes to some of these officials. The charges allege several of the officials were literally on the payroll, being paid tens of thousands of dollars a month to help either turn a blind eye to the crimes and of violence and drug dealing that they were involved in, and or literally helping them learn information that was being shared among law enforcement about their drug operations. So again, the Sinaloa governor and 9 others charged, and New York officials looking to have them extradited here to New York to face trial.
How quickly does that extradition process typically go, Jonathan? I could see it almost being a safety issue for the defendants here.
It could take quite a while. It could go relatively quickly. It really is at the hands of the Mexican government now in terms of how cooperative they want to be. We have seen in the past, recent past, that they have sent numerous drug kingpins back to New York and Chicago and elsewhere to face trial. So we await to see what will happen in this case.
All right, Jonathan Dienst for us in New York. Jonathan, thank you. The president, in just the last couple of minutes, posting that the U.S. is going to review, quote, the possible reduction of troops in Germany. This just hours after the Pentagon revealed that the war with Iran has already cost $25 billion with a B dollars, as the defense secretary appears on Capitol Hill for the first time since the war began. Lawmakers taking the opportunity to square off with Pete Hegseth over how long the war would last and the administration's justification for it.
Well, their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24.
We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions.
And the backdrop for all this, President Trump told Axios that he's rejecting Iran's proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz, saying he'll keep Iran under a naval blockade until the regime agrees to deal with the U.S. on its nuclear program. All this means we have a lot to talk about with Courtney Kube. So, Courtney, let's start with the president's post and Germany. How real should we consider this threat to remove troops from a key NATO ally?
Very real. I mean, this is something that some of President Trump's supporters during the campaign and then as soon as he came into office have talked about, and that's withdrawing some of the U.S. military presence from Europe. Now, the reason that Germany matters here is because Germany represents this key logistics hub for the U.S. military. OK, so there's U.S. European Command, U.S. Africa Command, both there. But it's not just that. Ramstein, the air base there. Landstuhl, huge medical facility where troops who are being injured in the war in Iran, in the Middle East, are being brought for medical treatment. So it would be an enormous loss of the footprint. That being said, there's 35 to 40,000, given the time, U.S. troops that are there. They could reduce the presence without really degrading the entire capabilities there of being this big logistics hub.
Doesn't it make a difference whether they send these people just say to Poland or a neighboring country versus yank them out of Europe entirely?
And that's probably what would happen here. Poland is one that we've heard about. But again, given how important that has been, the troops in Germany are playing a direct role, supporting role for what's happening in the Middle East. They support the role in Africa. It is an important military presence there. And then also just the fact that it's Germany. It's an important ally to the U.S. So what does that do with a relationship that's already been a little bit stressed lately?
Clearly sends a message. Also, let's talk about Pete Hegseth on the Hill today. How did what you heard square with what we know about what's going on the ground in the Middle East?
So, I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of specifics. The Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, they don't want to talk about operational details. They hide behind the possibility of restarting combat operations, which is a very real possibility here, right? And when you consider it, the ongoing blockade is technically still a large military operation that's ongoing there. So they don't want to get out ahead of any of that. That being said, there was a lot of back and forth, some very contentious back and forth about how little information has come forward. The one concrete thing that we got was this total cost, and that was from the acting comptroller, $25 billion. But even that is not totally clear, because that might include the cost of the munitions and aircraft and things that have been used, but not necessarily the total replacement cost. So.
Well, it's a start.
More questions than answers. I feel like that's always where I walk in here is more questions than answers.
Well, it'll keep you busy for tomorrow and the rest of the week.
Exactly.
Courtney Kube, thank you for that reporting.
Thanks.
Also breaking tonight, we're learning that a person has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder in London. We know the person is a 45-year-old British national. He's accused of stabbing two Jewish men on the street in broad daylight. A warning that what you're about to see might be disturbing. Surveillance video caught the suspect walking before lunging at one of the victims near a bus stop. And then nearby, you see him running down the street, trying to grab at another victim. Police say both men were treated for stab wounds or in stable condition at the hospital. We are just getting a look now at this new body cam video from police showing the suspect getting taken into custody. You see him there. It's a little confusing and shaky, confronting officers here. They respond by tasering him to the ground, then repeatedly kicking him as they try to make the arrest. We do want to note that the blurring you see in this video was done by British police. Danielle Hamajan is in London for us. Danielle, walk us through these new details. What else are we learning about the attacks and about the man who's now in custody?
Yeah, some pretty dramatic video there. This is a suburb of northwest London called Golders Green. Population 16,000. Half of them are British Jews, so home to a very big community for the Jewish population here in London. And it's here that in broad daylight, two Jewish men were stabbed. You showed the video of one man being lunged at by the suspect. It happened around 11 a.m. One man in his 70s, the other man in his 30s, both now in hospital. But police say that when they confronted the suspect, he refused to drop his weapon, refused to show his hands. They feared he was holding or had something else other than a knife, perhaps an explosive device. So they proceeded to tasering him, pinning him to the ground and arresting him. Now they've declared this a terror incident. The suspect, 45 years old, has just come out in the last few minutes that he is a British national born in Somalia with a history of serious violence and mental health issues, and he's now in custody on suspicion of attempted murder. What people here will tell you is that they are
shocked that this could happen in broad daylight, but they are not surprised. This is, they say, part of a pattern. We've heard the British Prime Minister talk about describing this as appalling. He said that an attack on the Jewish community is an attack on Britain. I spoke to a man here earlier today who talked about how, you know, some people who are intent on doing harm are equating what's happening in Israel to Jews everywhere, and they are on the receiving end of this abuse and this anger. Take a listen.
It's not a surprise. This has been going on for some time now. All our institutions, our schools and our synagogues have to have security around them, has to have protection from potential violence and terrorism. And it's unacceptable. We have to live in a society like that.
And so authorities are saying that there will be a larger police presence. But as you heard the man just saying that, or he's not alone, that it is not normal to have police outside synagogues and schools everywhere here. Garrett, back to you.
This is not the kind of thing you want to see. Danielle Hamamdjian for us in London. Thank you very much. And coming up, the new details just into us from police about this deadly home explosion in Ohio. Plus, why one new exhibit at a museum in Berlin is raising some eyebrows. Fireworks in a California courtroom today as the richest man in the world was getting combative with lawyers for one of the most influential AI companies in the world. All of it part of a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit pitting billionaire against billionaire. Our team inside court reporting that Elon Musk and an attorney for OpenAI were talking all over each other during cross-examination. At one point, Musk said the attorney's questions were designed to, quote, trick him and mislead the jury. Musk's testimony today outlining the pretty sharp contrast in his relationship with OpenAI over the years. His attorney presenting emails like this from 2018 where company execs called Musk, quote, the most overwhelmingly competent person in the world. And another who said Musk had, quote, clarity of purpose. Feelings, Musk said, at the time were mutual. Remember, the reason Musk is on the stand at all here is because he's accusing OpenAI CEO Sam Altman of betraying the company's initial mission by changing the nonprofit that Musk invested in into the for-profit company it is now. Musk testified that time and time again, Altman and others assured him this was a nonprofit. OpenAI's team argues that Musk just wanted control and got mad when the company wouldn't give it to him. OpenAI says the whole reason Musk filed this lawsuit is to take a hit at what amounts to a direct competitor to his own AI company, xAI. Brian Chung's been following this story for us and can break it down a little bit. So, Brian, the judge today had to jump in a couple of times to get both Musk and OpenAI lawyers to just calm down. How tense, how unusual was this in the courtroom?
Yeah, our producers that are in court in Oakland did describe this as combative, specifically when the attorneys for OpenAI and Sam Altman began cross-examining Elon Musk in his second day of testimony. By the way, that's going to stretch into day 3 tomorrow. And Elon Musk was facing a lot of these questions where the lawyer was trying to get yes, no answers out of him. And Musk appeared to, as you outlined, felt that some of these questions were misleading. He didn't agree with the premise that these were easily answerable with yes or no answers. In one really bizarre retort, he returned a line of questioning to the questioning attorney by saying, when will you stop beating your wife, as a hypothetical, the judge saying, hey, whoa, time out, we're not going there. But this is one example of just how complicated and really testy things were in the court. There was a moment where William Savitt, again, who is the attorney representing OpenAI and Sam Altman, said it's difficult to get concise answers out of the witness. And the judge responded, that's your job. So, again, there's kind of this temperature inside the room where you have this lawyer trying to get answers out of Elon. He's not answering them. The judge isn't necessarily being sympathetic to the lawyer, saying, I guess, try to ask better questions here. But, again, all of this gets at what could be $134 billion on the line. That's how much Musk wants OpenAI to pay up if he wins this case.
And OpenAI's lawyer today also apparently spent some time talking to Musk about Tesla and how Musk wanted Tesla to make artificial general intelligence. I guess the idea here is that Musk just wants control over the broader industry. How does the car company connect to the lawsuit here?
Yeah, and I think that, again, this is about OpenAI and this is about artificial intelligence, but Tesla does enter into the fold because as part of Elon Musk's, let's call it Marvel Cinematic Universe of many companies that he's working on, of course, artificial intelligence is embedded into every single one of them. And the lawyers on OpenAI were trying to paint a picture of Elon Musk as someone that at one point wanted to get OpenAI to be folded into Tesla to build artificial general intelligence. And Elon Musk was facing some questions about that. You have to remember on the XAI side of things, he's consolidated Twitter. He has SpaceX as well. All of these things are likely going to be part of the questioning in the days going forward as he goes into day 3 tomorrow, Garrett.
It's confusing stuff. I'm glad you're on top of it, Brian Chung, for us tonight. Thank you. And let's get you over to the 5 things now our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, former Attorney General Pam Bondi will appear, after all, before a key House panel. 1 month from today, lawmakers will get a chance to ask her about her handling of the Epstein files. Democrats say this happened not an hour after their filing of contempt charges against her. Remember, the DOJ had tried to block her testimony, saying that President Trump fired her, so why did private citizen Bondi need to show up? Well, now Bondi's agreeing to testify, and we will be watching. Number 2, a scary moment caught on camera, a car slamming into a Twitch streamer. It happened in the middle of a cross-country walk to raise money for a school. That streamer is now recovering in a hospital. Number 3, you see there the Artemis II crew getting the Oval Office treatment today. President Trump congratulated the astronauts on their mission around the moon. He says he thinks the U.S. has a, quote, good shot at putting an astronaut on the moon again before his term ends. Number 4, look at this. Robot dogs with hyper-realistic silicone heads of people you might recognize, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. You may be asking why. It's part of a new interactive installation at a Berlin museum. The artist says it's a commentary on how our perceptions are shaped by algorithms and tech platforms. Number 5, gird your loins. The real-life Emily in The Devil Wears Prada finally revealing her true identity. Here's Leslie Fremar. She says she inspired the character in the OG book, later played by Emily Blunt in the movie. And fans out there might know she wasn't painted exactly in the best light here. She said she found out when Anna Wintour told her that their ex-assistant wrote a book about them and said Emily's character was, quote, worse than her. The Supreme Court just dealt a major blow to the Voting Rights Act, and it's likely a win for Republicans ahead of the midterms. In a 6-3 ruling, the High Court struck down Louisiana's congressional map, saying states can almost never consider race when drawing their maps. Justice Alito wrote in a majority opinion that their map was a, quote, unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Justice Kagan dissenting, quote, the consequences are likely to be far-reaching and grave. And now Louisiana could redraw its congressional map just 2 weeks before voters head to the polls in their midterm primaries there. It's too soon to tell exactly what the total impact of this ruling will be across the country, but it could open the door for other states to redraw their maps too. A Tennessee lawmaker, for example, reportedly says she wants to use the Supreme Court's ruling to pass a new map in that state that eliminates a majority black district around Memphis. Lawmakers in the Florida House and Senate just approved a map that gives Republicans a big boost in the Sunshine State, sending that map to the governor's desk to sign. And it all comes on the backdrop of a months-long redistricting battle that's taken place all across the country, with a handful of other states redrawing their maps in moves that could ultimately tip the balance of power on Capitol Hill. Let's bring in Sahil Kapoor. So, Sahil, based on this ruling today and what it would mean for the Voting Rights Act and changing the way some of these districts are drawn to protect minority representation, what states might have a realistic shot at redrawing their maps, perhaps even again ahead of the midterms?
So first, Garrett, the bigger picture. According to sources in both parties I've talked to, only a handful of seats at most are likely to be impacted in the current 2026 midterms, just 6 months away. And the most obvious places are this: Louisiana, where the case was. There are 2 Democratic-held districts that Republicans could try to draw out. In addition, Alabama, 2 Democratic-held districts they could try to draw out. Tennessee, that has a late primary. There's 1 Democratic district they could try to draw out. I've also heard South Carolina mentioned as a possibility. That is still TBD. There are lots of states in the South in particular that are weighing their options right now. There are others like North Carolina, Texas, and Mississippi where primaries are already done, so it's a little too late in the calendar for them to redraw at this time. And of course, this all comes in the midst of an ongoing redistricting battle that just yesterday looked like a wash for both parties before Florida had their say. They're trying to, they passed this new map trying to draw up to 4 more Republican-held seats. Let's show the balance here. It was about 10-10 before Florida had their say. Now Florida could have up to 4 more Republican seats. So between these two developments, the advantage here, just in the redrawing map, tilts toward Republicans. And the last point I'll make here, Garrett, is if the landscape stays what it is today, where Democrats are overperforming by about double digits, this might not yield the kind of benefits that Republicans expect, because as the minority leader here on the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffries, says, he calls it a dummy mander, which is the trolling term of art in Florida and Texas for trying to draw a district to gain power while diluting existing ones so you lose them.
Right. I mean, we talk about these seats like as soon as the maps are redrawn that they automatically go one way, but it's just based on the way voters performed in previous elections. That doesn't necessarily guarantee future results. So can you clarify a little bit, Sahil? So for like a state like Texas, where they've already had their primaries, that means you're not redrawing a map this time around, but we're looking at potentially new maps again next cycle for 2028?
Absolutely, and that's where the biggest impact of this ruling is going to be felt. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 36 majority-minority House districts that were drawn to be compliant with the section of the Voting Rights Act to protect minority representation. Now that is essentially gone, if you believe Justice Elena Kagan, and states are certainly going to try to redraw their maps. There are a number of states, Republican-held states, particularly in the South, that don't like those districts because they tend to vote Democrat. Those could be drawn out, and we're already hearing a desire among Democrats to go even more aggressive and even more retaliatory in redistricting in blue states like California and Illinois. Suffice it to say, this will accelerate a race to the bottom on redistricting, Garrett.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out over these next couple of months. Sahil, I know you'll be all over it. When we come back, we'll bring you to a trail of destruction left by relentless storms across the South. Our team in Texas will tell us what they're seeing up close, and how the Pope put his foot down before meeting a nun from his hometown. We'll explain next. Right now, a massive cleanup is underway after powerful storms, including 2 tornadoes, tore through parts of the South. Here's some of the worst of it. About 80 miles from Dallas, an EF3 tornado here, making this area just about unrecognizable. Dozens of homes ripped from their foundations. Somehow, only 5 non-threatening injuries were reported. And as we've been talking about for days, severe weather isn't just an issue in Texas. Check this out in Missouri, after hailstones shattered car windows. Let's bring in George Solis, who's made his way to Mineral Wells, Texas. So, George, the weather has been just relentless across the South. What are you hearing from folks there?
Yeah, hey, Garrett, 6 straight days of severe storms. Here, officials saying it is, frankly, nothing short of a miracle that nobody died. When you talk about an EF3 tornado with winds up to 145 miles per hour, and as you referenced, the destruction here is rampant. Buildings looking just like the ones behind me. They are completely leveled. We're talking homes and businesses. Here in Mineral Wells, the epicenter of most of this damage happening around an industrial area. So many people, including business owners, were still working when these tornadoes struck. Some of them riding out the storms even in the building. We actually also spoke to a homeowner a little bit earlier today who rode out the storm inside of their home. They were describing just the frightening scene you can imagine as the twister ripped the roof right off of their home. They didn't know what was going to happen next. Today, the heartbreaking scene as they returned, beginning to find some of their belongings, even looking for pets. And as I mentioned, we heard from business owners who were inside watching this all unfold. Take a listen to what one of them told us.
You can hear the debris. My ears popped. We've got one building in there. It's made out of solid concrete. Put everybody in there and had to wait it out.
It hit hard, and we've had a lot of volunteers. The community stepped up, and they got out here first thing this morning to help clean up.
Yeah, and I was mentioning all of the help that's coming into this community. Officials actually asking people to just wait a little bit. Right now, this area is basically a do-not-enter zone outside of some press and some of the first responders here and line workers, because they want to make sure they're able to assess all of this damage and make sure they can get to it safely before everybody starts coming back in here to get some of their belongings. But the cleanup here, Garrett, certainly going to be extensive.
It certainly looks that way. George Solis, west of the Metroplex for us in Mineral Wells, Texas. George, thank you. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because it's tough to read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they say is going down in their regions. It's a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest bureau, one person is dead after a house explosion in Ohio. You see it here, fully collapsed. Neighbors say the blast shook their homes and blew out windows. No word yet on what caused the explosion. Also, from our Southern Bureau, take a look here. Body cam video showing Texas police officers saving a family from a flood. You'd see officers, they're using jumper cables to pull a woman out of a car as it was filling up with water. That mom and her 3 kids are doing fine. The town says its police cars will now have water rescue gear. And also out of our Midwest Bureau, check out the world's biggest White Sox fan and his new gear. Pope Leo getting a delivery from a Chicago nun. But here's the catch. The Vatican would not let Sister Deb wear her own gear. Why? She's a Brewers fan. It doesn't work. Fandom aside, the nun and the small business who provided the jerseys are calling the whole thing truly surreal, I bet. After the break, in tonight's original, our team speaks with asylum seekers from Iran living in the U.S. Why some say life was better back home, even as they fight to stay. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching closely. With so many people impacted by the war with Iran, ceasefire or no ceasefire, tonight we're taking a closer look at a specific, often overlooked group, Iranian asylum seekers. They fled the regime and came to the United States for refuge, but many are now stuck in limbo, in and out of ICE detention, fearing for relatives, their homeland, and fighting for a chance for freedom in the U.S. Yasmin Basugian has their story.
مجبور بودیم یعنی هیچ راه دیگه ای نداشتیم باید می اومدیم بیرون.
Farzaneh Nazi knew she had to leave Iran in 2022 during the Women Life Freedom protests. It was in a street protest like these when she says her sister, standing right next to her, was shot in the face by government forces. Her sister survived the less lethal rounds but lost vision in one eye. Also, Farzaneh's husband, Assad, worked for a banned Kurdish opposition party, drawing harassment and beatings from the government. Then in early 2025, charging documents show Assad facing imprisonment for, quote, betrayal, propaganda, and disturbance. That is when they finally decided to flee. They left a happy life and a close family, but they say it was impossible to stay.
کلا زیر سایه جمهوری اسلامی زندگی می‌کردیم دیگه همیشه با ترس با استرس با بدبختی اینا.
Their route to the U.S. took them through Venezuela, Panama, and Mexico. They shared messages with NBC News showing how along the way they were extorted by gangs, also saying they were detained by government forces. They arrived at the U.S. border at Eagle Pass, Texas, and crossed. They were apprehended and claimed asylum. It was March of 2025.
My administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown.
ICE data shows hundreds of Iranians were detained in the last year of the Biden administration. Then the government stopped regularly reporting numbers after President Trump was inaugurated. The Department of Homeland Security declined to tell NBC News how many Iranians are currently in custody. Farzaneh and Assad are essentially invisible in government statistics, but their circumstances are very real. The couple was separated in detention. Farzaneh was soon released. She was 7 months pregnant.
بعد این روزی که بچه‌م به دنیا آمد واقعا خیلی خوب بود. اگه همسرم بود شاید میتونید بگم بهترین روز زندگی میشد. ولی جای خالیش همیشه هست. همیشه بود. یعنی تو مثلا
It would have been the best day. It was the best day of your life when you gave birth to your son.
بچه‌تو به دنیا بیاری ولی مثلا
But you were alone.
Their son Rasan, now 10 months old, has never known his father's touch. Assad regularly FaceTimes with his family from detention. Just a month after fleeing Iran, Assad was sentenced to 25 years in jail there without a trial. Now in the U.S., he sits in ICE detention. It has been a year. He says he's worried for his family's safety as he watches the war play out. Despite his asylum claim and a legal challenge to his imprisonment, Assad is marked for removal. With his home country at war with the United States, he fears for his life being sent back to the region and says the judges here don't believe his documents or anything that he says. They just want to deport him and the other Iranians in detention with him. Even during a ceasefire, the family watches the conflict unfold, fearing for relatives, their homeland, and their own chance at freedom.
The climate for asylum seekers in the United States is poor at the moment, and that's true across nationalities. But I think that for Iranian refugees with pending asylum claims in this country, the fact that the United States is now in an active armed conflict with their country of origin puts them in this very difficult position where they feel the country that they look to for protection no longer seems like a reliable protector.
While their cases drag on, Farzaneh is living with a relative in Tennessee, along with the wife of her cousin, Mina Bashmari, also seeking asylum with her young son. Mina's husband was deported back to Iran in September. She says he fled the regime the very next day, fearing for his life. Now he remains in exile, calling occasionally for brief updates.
Are you afraid that you could be separated from your son?
خیلی وقتا حتی کابوسشو میبینم خیلی وقتا.
Mina was released with an ankle monitor last May.
بهم گفت یا اینو باید ببندی به پاد یا باید بری زندان و بچه‌تو ازت میگیرن و معلوم نیست که چه اتفاقی. خیلی میترسم. Sorry.
It's okay. خیلی سخته.
خیلی.
Her case in limbo as she watches President Trump make statements like this.
To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible.
And the president has expressed support for the Iranian people, right? He has said we want to free the Iranian people from this regime. But yet you are here with an ankle bracelet on. Your husband was deported. There are other people like you in the same situation.
من که سیاستمدار نیستم ولی فقط انگار مردم عادی بازیچن. هزاران زندگی از هم میپاشه. هزاران نفر بدون بچه میشن، بدون پدر میشن.
In a statement to NBC News, DHS said that Assad will, quote, receive full due process, adding, being in detention is a choice, and encouraged all people who enter the United States illegally to accept the government stipend of $2,600 and a free flight to self-deport. It did not answer our questions about removing Iranian asylum seekers during a war.
در کل بهتر بودیم قبل از اینکه بیایم بیرون.
For Mina, Farzaneh, and so many others, their homeland in turmoil, their future in the U.S. equally uncertain.
فقط مردم عادی ایران دارن ضربه میبرن. وگرنه هیچ برنده این وسط نیست.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
When we come back, the royal invasion of New York, what the king and queen are up to today in the country's biggest city, and our own Jenna Bush Hager's exclusive interview. Day 3 of the royals' U.S. visit saw the scene shift to New York City for the day, including an emotional first for King Charles and Queen Camilla. The king made his first ever visit to the 9/11 memorial in Lower Manhattan. He and the Queen laying a bouquet of flowers at one of the memorial pools there. 67 British nationals were among the lives lost in the terror attack that took place 25 years ago this September. You see the royal couple were guided by former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. They also exchanged pleasantries with local leaders, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and current Mayor Zohran Mamdani. I want to bring in Aaron McLaughlin now. So, Aaron, what's some of the significance here of the visit to New York City? Help us understand where this fits in kind of the big picture special relationship between the U.S. and the U.K.
Well, this was another poignant and historic moment for King Charles. Garrett visiting the 9/11 memorial just months before the 25th anniversary of that horrific terror attack, which claimed almost 3,000 lives, including 67 British citizens. It was likely an emotional moment for him. You see him there meeting with first responders. You see him meeting. We also saw him meeting with the mayor of New York. You see them there laying flowers at the memorial. He also left a note expressing solidarity with the American people. And that solidarity was very much a theme throughout this visit. We saw his address to the joint meeting of Congress yesterday, in which he talked about 9/11, how it was the first time that the NATO alliance invoked Article 5 of the treaty, that critical collective defense treaty. He took the opportunity there to sort of reiterate the importance of that alliance to global security, to the security of both the United Kingdom and the United States going forward. So those themes certainly reiterated today, just in the mere visuals of that emotional moment there at the New York, the 9/11 memorial. And then from there, his visit continued on throughout the rest of the city.
They were all over town today. I think pretty close to 30 Rock today, too, right?
Yeah, that's right. We understand, actually, that visit is happening right now. It was a packed day from the 9/11 memorial. They sort of split up. The Queen went to a literary event at the New York Public Library. It was a star-studded event, including the likes of Anna Wintour, as well as Sarah Jessica Parker. Our very own Jenna Bush Hager had the chance to talk to the Queen about literature and the importance of literature, their shared passion. Take a listen to a bit of that conversation.
You've been to a lot of places, to quite a few.
We have, but it's been wonderful, and everybody's been very kind and welcoming.
The King went there from the 9/11 memorial to an urban planning event in Harlem, an urban farming event where he even fed some chickens. From chickens, he went to the Titans, meeting the CEOs here at 30 Rock in Midtown Manhattan. We understand right now there's a cultural event where they reunited for the cultural event before heading back to D.C. Garrett.
Just another day in the office for the King, and you can see more of that interview with Queen Camilla tomorrow morning on the Today Show. Aaron, thank you for your reporting. That's going to be a wrap for this hour. Our coverage picks up right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.